Good morning. Today we continue with the book of Job, chapters 14 through 16. And in chapter 13, Job was talking back to his, not talking back, but responding to his friends. And his words are gentle, even though I'm sure he's quite upset. He's not yelling and screaming at these friends that are filled with hot air, as he basically told them. But he's asking God to withdraw his hand, God's hand that has put this devastation upon him. And he's asking God also to show him his sins so that he might know what's wrong. And he continues in chapter 14 with that thought that was, chapters 13 and 14 are Job speaking. And, it would be nicer for us as we're talking and reading if the speech was together in one day, but it's not. We have 14 is Job finishing speaking, 15 is one of the friends, and 16 again, Job speaks. But Job starts chapter 14, immortal, born of women, few of days and full of trouble, comes up like a flower and withers. He flees like a shadow and he does not last. And he's saying to God, how do you fix your eyes on one? How do you watch? How do you pay attention to a mortal? Why is a mortal worth your watching and paying attention to? And then he says, do you bring me into judgment? Who can clean out a thing of unclean? No one can. And so it's, our sinful bodies, we can't cleanse them ourselves. Only God can do that. And then, since their days are determined, the number of their months known, you have appointed the bounds. So God knows what's going on. And then Job compares human life to the life of a tree, a plant. He says, for there's hope for a tree. If it's cut down, it can sprout again. It can come back up from the roots. When the water comes, it will grow again. But when a human dies and is laid to rest in the ground, the human has no hope. He says, but humans expire. Where are they? As water falls from a lake and a river dries up, mortals lie down and do not live again. And that's, for a river, a water, once the water is passed, that water doesn't flow by there again. Yeah, so, the water in the river is a temporary flowing thing. A river is kind of a living being, but, the water moves through and never comes back again. And then he says, oh, that you would hide me in Sheol, this, place of, a place that was kind of held, between heaven and hell, more or less. I don't really understand Sheol, but hide me there, until you would, and conceal me until your wrath is past. Give me a hiding spot. Give me someplace I could be until your wrath is past so that I may live. He says, all the days of my service, I would wait until my release would come. You would call and I would answer. It's again, speaking of his faith. And then verse 17, I love verse 17. My transgression would be sealed up in a bag. You would cover my iniquity. And again, here's that trust in God, that God is going to forgive the sins that he has. And he knows that he is righteous, and he's righteous because of his faith and trust in God, that God would cover his sins, cover his iniquity, and hide his iniquity. And then mountains fall and crumble away, and a rock is removed, the waters wear away. You destroy the hope of mortals, you prevail against them. And so again, this despair. They feel only the pain of their bodies. They mourn for themselves. And so we're, in this book of Job, we're seeing the sorrow, the anguish, all stuff that comes and happens in real life for us. And it's to trust, just like Job trusts, that this isn't, the things that happen in our lives, God's not given us this trouble. And that statement that, God won't give people more than they can bear is not in the Bible. God gives us the strength to get through what life throws at us. And God walks through and with us each day. You know, God knows what our limits are, yes, but God doesn't give us troubles. And this is what, you know, Job is reiterating that. He's telling us and reminding us of that. And he's, you know, but yet in so many ways, you know, Job is saying, you know, God, take this away from me. Why did you let this happen? But we know, as we've been reading this, that, you know, God puts the world in motion, and, you know, and Satan, you know, is the one that caused all of this devastation. Sin, death, evil, you know, the brokenness of the world is what caused Job's problems, not God himself. And then Eliphaz in verse 15 talks again. Should the wise answer with windy knowledge, you know, I mean, more of that hot air, and fill themselves with the east wind? Should they argue in unprofitable talk, or in words which can do no good? But he says, you are talking about taking away the fear of God, the respect of God, hindering the mediation before God. You know, so Eliphaz is saying that, he says, your sin teaches your mouth. You choose the tongue of the crafty. Your own mouth condemns you, and not I. You know, and, you know, so these friends aren't really hearing Job. They don't really know the depth of Job and the faith of Job. And then he goes on, are you the firstborn of the human race? Were you brought before the hills? Do you limit wisdom to yourself? And then, what do you know that we don't know? I mean, Job knows who he is. Job knows of his faith in God. Job knows that he hasn't done any grievous sin that he would have earned all of this bad to happen in his life. Job understands that it isn't because of his life, you know. So what do you know that we don't know? I mean, Job knows God. He has a deep relationship with God. He says, what do you understand that's not clear to us? You know, the gray-haired and aged are on our side, you know. And so Eliphaz, this friend, is again saying, you know, you don't know what you're talking about. But Job continues to trust in that. And then verse 14, again, kind of talking, you know, reinforcing what Job said. He says, what are mortals that they can be clean? Of those born of women, can they be righteous? God puts trust not even in his holy ones. And so, you know, Job had made that comment that no one can live, you know, a perfect life. And, you know, what are mortals that they can be clean? I mean, we can't pay for our own sins. And it's like, you know, that Job said a couple chapters ago that he needed a mediator. And just last chapter that, you know, my transgressions would be sealed in a bag. And then Eliphaz says in verse 17, I will show you, listen to me. What I have seen, I will declare. What sages have said, what they have, you know, the ancestors have not hidden. You know, the wicked writhe in pain all their days. So he's basically putting Job into this classification of wicked. They writhe in pain all of their days. They get this punishment. But we know in our world today that the wicked, you know, live, like Job said earlier too, the wicked live long lives as well. It isn't, you know, it isn't that. And, you know, Eliphaz says, distress and anguish terrify them, prevailing against them because they stretched out their hands against God, and bid defiance to the Almighty in verse 25. So again, you know, you've screwed up, you know, immensely, and you're not admitting it. And then chapter 16 again, Job says, I have heard many such things, miserable comforters you are. You know, again, you're full of hot air. You're not listening, Job says. You know, you're not understanding. You know, you're trying to figure out my sins. You're trying to figure out my flaws, and I'm telling you, I've been telling you and telling you. You know, it's just, I've told you a million times, can't you hear? You know, but he didn't. But Job is speaking to them, you know, and reminding them that, you know, have windy words no limit? Or what provokes you that you keep on talking? You know, you're just, you're not hearing me. And how often does that happen in our lives too? That we don't hear what the other is saying, that we don't listen. And then Job goes on, verse 18, my face is red with weeping and deep darkness on my eyelids, although there is no violence in my hands and my prayer is pure. You know, this life is wearing him out. He's at the end of his rope, and, he asked in chapter 14 for God to hide him until the wrath is past. But yet, to be hidden from God. And then verse 18, O earth, do not cover my blood. Let my outcry find no resting place. Even now, in fact, my witness is in heaven, and he that vouches for me is on high. So again, Job continues to have that faith in God, and that God will vouch for him, that he is indeed right in his relationship with God. And that's, I think, what we need to try to do as well, to be right in our relationship with God. And we do that through the gift of forgiveness in and through Jesus Christ our Lord. And he's the mediator that Job talked about a couple chapters ago as well.